Good Tuesday morning. If I can, I'd like to focus on John's Gospel. I pushed hard on the Acts yesterday, but I want to just push it. In John's Gospel, he says, if you love me, etc. The love is the central virtue, as it were, in the Christian ethos. It's to love each other, to love one another as I have loved you, and it means to sacrifice yourself. Christ loved us on the cross. And there's no selfishness on the cross, you see. To love one another as I have loved you. And in that love comes the peace that is so elusive in life. So this is what he says, and this is chapter 14, okay? He says, Jesus said to his disciples, peace I leave you, my peace I give you. Not as the world gives, do I give it to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. You heard me tell you, I am going away and I will come back to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I'm going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. And now I have told you this before it happens, so when it happens, you may believe. I will no longer speak much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming. He has no power over me. But the world must know that I love the Father, and that I do just as the Father has commanded me, which he means he's going to the cross. It's Good Friday. This is setting up Good Friday, which all the powers of evil, separation, darkness, the demonic of life is overcome. The demonic condition of life is overcome by Christ's crucifixion, crucified love. The wisdom of the cross conquers the foolishness of the world. And for St. Paul and for John, the world signifies the powers of darkness. It doesn't mean the earth. It means it's contradistinguished from Christ himself, actually. You choose between the world and Christ. The world are all the powers of divisiveness, loneliness, and hate. Christ is unity and love. For Christ is the author of peace, a peace that takes place within one's heart and generates, through its love for each other, a peace that transcends all conflict and loneliness. I think I gave a talk one time. I don't know where I gave it. I gave it somewhere. The Pursuit of Intimacy. I did. I know it was at SLU. I got invited to the university to do it. I don't know why. Somebody asked me to do it. Oh, my, it was a big audience. There was 600 people there. Holy moly, Andy. Okay? Anyway, and my talk was on the pursuit of intimacy. And it's that we are lonely animals. We are really radically lonely animals. I think the original sin is the condition of loneliness. And it is a pervasive sin because loneliness begets tragically, self-absorption. And in the self-absorption, radicalizing even greater loneliness. We have to resist loneliness. We have to transcend it. And we transcend it through love. We have to transcend it through love. But it isn't love of self. It's love of another through self-sacrifice. And that's not common. That's not easy. It's the ultimate virtue. And that is the peace that Christ offers us because it's a peace of intimacy. It's the peace that comes from the intimacy of the heart. And that is not easy. The natural state of human beings is the state, in a sense, Thomas Hobbes might have had it right. It's the state of nature. It is, in a sense, a kind of a radical selfishness that has to be overcome. But it's not overcome by violence, that was Hobbes, and self-interest, but by self-sacrifice. Aristotle said through friendship, but friendship needs to be radicalized even more than the virtuous life. It has to be self-transcendent. There's a paradox in Christianity that transcends the genius of Aristotle, that true friendship comes through self-sacrifice. He couldn't have known that because he didn't have the cross of Christ. That comes 400 years later. So the virtues alone are not enough. Not enough. What is necessary is self-transcendence. And it's the self-transcendence of the cross. See, that's the peace that Christ gives us. It's not a contractual peace. It's not the absence of the cessation of violence. That's Thomas Hobbes, okay? And it's not just friendship alone, but a community of love that is deeper than human friendship. It's deeper than virtuous friendship. It's a more radical friendship. It's the friendship in the communion within the church That is the communion of love through self-sacrifice, in sharing and fulfilling fulfilling what was wanting in the suffering of Christ as we live the Christ life. I didn't say that well at all, but I mean that too. I don't think there is any peace in the world without Christ. I don't think Aristotle's enough. I do teach it because I teach philosophy, and I say we get to choose Thomas Hobbes or Aristotle. If you choose Hobbes, then everyone's your enemy, no one's your friend. If you choose Aristotle, then you choose friendship and the virtues of friendship, and I certainly support that. But it's not enough, because what Aristotle couldn't have known was the kind of the doctrine of original sin, if you don't mind me putting it that way, that there is something radically at our very root of our existence, there's a radical selfishness. And that screams out for the grace of redemptive healing, and then takes the sacrifice of Christ on the cross, not only to provide us with the Spirit of life, the Holy Spirit, but also in the final analysis, the perfect example of love, which is to die for another, is self-sacrifice. Without that, I think we're condemned to loneliness. And I think that if you had no other reason at all, let's say you're a complete pagan, okay, you have no belief in God, the message of Christ on the cross is still a salvific, redemptive message. Why? He says, you want to be happy in this world, you have to be willing to give it away. If you grasp life, you will lose it. You're grasping at the air. But if you're willing to give it away, paradoxically, you get it all. If you're willing to sacrifice yourself, to love another more than yourself, then you will have both yourself and the other. If you love yourself more than the other, you'll die alone. And I've seen that in life. Anybody who's involved in the psychiatric or psychological profession or pastoral, you pay attention, you see how selfishness will lead in the end to radical loneliness, isolation and loneliness. I remember thinking the worst thing I could think of was when somebody dies and no one cares, no one cries. Why? Why don't they cry? Because you were never there anyway. There was no loss. You got what you paid for. You were always out for yourself, and now you died by yourself. There's something ruthlessly true about what I just said. And yet somebody who has loved magnanimously, loved others, and upon their death, there are many tears because they feel the loss of your life. You made a difference to them. You made them richer for having existed. You made them richer for having loved them, been loved by them. Isn't that neat? Yeah, I didn't say that well, but you get the point. Even if I were a complete pagan, I would look at Christ as the example of love and the hope that maybe through sacrificial love, my loneliness would come to an end.